I chose my coworker over my marriage. Now I'm wondering why he won't let me back in. That's literally my life right now. And I honestly can't believe I'm in this situation. I'm Victoria, 32, and I never thought I'd be that woman, the one who blows up her whole marriage for someone else. But here I am. Thomas and I were together for 5 years. 5 whole years of my life that I thought were pretty good, until they just weren't. It's hard to explain exactly when things started feeling off. Maybe it was when he got that promotion last year and suddenly was working late 3 nights a week. Or maybe it was how we stopped having those deep conversations and just talked about bills and his daughter's school stuff. His daughter Emma is 9. From his previous relationship. She's a good kid, I guess. I tried with her, I really did. But it's not easy stepping into someone else's mom role, especially when her actual mom is still in the picture every other weekend, undermining everything I try to establish. Between us, I wanted to scream every time Emma came home saying, "But my mom lets me." Anyway, that's when Ryan started at our office. He transferred from the Seattle branch, and from day one, there was just this energy between us. Thomas hadn't looked at me the way Ryan did in years. Ryan actually listened when I talked about my day instead of nodding while scrolling through his phone. And he noticed things, like when I changed my hair or wore a new outfit. Thomas stopped noticing that stuff long ago. I wasn't planning anything at first. We were just friends, grabbing coffee during breaks, texting about work stuff. Then the texting started going later into the evenings. I'd be sitting on the couch with Thomas watching whatever boring documentary he picked, secretly smiling at something funny Ryan sent. That should have been my first warning sign, hiding my phone screen. But I told myself it was innocent. The office holiday party changed everything. Thomas couldn't go because Emma had a school performance that night. Ryan and I ended up talking in the corner for hours, and when everyone else had left, he kissed me in the parking lot. I should have stopped it there. Instead, I kissed him back, hard. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan, comparing him to Thomas constantly. Thomas with his predictable routines and dad jokes and the way he'd fall asleep on the couch by 9:30. Ryan was exciting and spontaneous and made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. Those other women at work were so jealous, always giving me these looks when Ryan and I would go to lunch. Basic bitches couldn't handle that a guy like Ryan would choose me over them. I started making excuses to work late, creating fake girls' nights. The lies came so easily, which probably should have been another warning sign. But I was high on the feeling of being wanted again, of feeling alive. Thomas barely questioned my sudden busy schedule. He was too caught up with work and Emma to notice what was happening right under his nose. Then Ryan asked the question that changed everything. "Why are we sneaking around? You're not happy with him. Just leave." It seemed so simple when he put it that way. Why was I staying in a marriage that had lost its spark? I deserved happiness. I deserved passion. So I made my decision. I waited until Emma was at her mom's for the weekend. I sat Thomas down and told him I wanted out. I didn't mention Ryan. I'm not completely heartless. I just said I wasn't happy anymore and needed space to figure myself out. Thomas looked like I'd struck him. He kept asking what he'd done wrong, what he could fix. But the truth was, I was already gone. My mind was full of the future I'd have with Ryan. "Is there someone else?" Thomas finally asked, his voice breaking. "No," I lied, looking him straight in the eyes. "This is about me, not you." I packed a suitcase that night and went to Ryan's apartment. He seemed surprised to see me with luggage, like he hadn't actually expected me to go through with it. But he recovered quickly, helped me bring my stuff inside, and we celebrated my freedom with wine and the kind of attention Thomas hadn't given me in months. The first few weeks with Ryan were exactly what I needed. No more planning dinners around Emma's picky eating. No more waiting up for Thomas to finish work calls. No more pretending to care about his friends, boring stories at neighborhood cookouts. Just me and Ryan, free to do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. "We should take a weekend trip," Ryan suggested one Friday morning as we got ready for work. "Let's just drive up the coast, find a cute hotel, drink too much wine." That was something Thomas would never do, Spontaneous getaways weren't possible with a 9-year-old and his responsible dad routine. We booked a room for that night, packed quickly, and called in sick to work. The drive up the coast with the windows down, music blasting, felt like a scene from the kind of life I was meant to have all along. The hotel was this charming little place overlooking the water. We barely left the room that weekend, except to grab food and more wine. It was intoxicating being with someone who wanted me so intensely. Thomas and I had settled into such a predictable routine that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be desired like this. "This is what you've been missing," Ryan whispered that night. And I believed him. Back at work, hiding our relationship became a thrilling game. Secret glances across meetings, accidentally brushing against each other in the break room, sneaking into the supply closet for a quick kiss when nobody was looking. Those other women in the office definitely noticed something was up. I caught Melissa giving me side-eye when Ryan brought me coffee one morning. She'd been flirting with him before I came along. Too bad for her. He was mine now. Thomas kept texting, but the messages had changed. Instead of begging me to come back, he was asking practical questions about bills, about when I'd pick up the rest of my stuff, about what to tell Emma. I took my time responding. Part of me enjoyed making him wait, making him feel a fraction of the uncertainty I'd felt in our marriage. "Do you miss her?" Ryan asked one night, when he caught me staring at a text from Thomas about Emma's school play. "The kid, I mean." "Sometimes," I admitted. "But it's not like she's really my daughter." The truth was, I did miss Emma. Her crazy bedtime stories and the way she'd curl up next to me during movie nights. But admitting that felt like admitting I'd made a mistake, so I pushed those feelings down too. A month into living with Ryan, the first cracks started to show. Small things at first. He wasn't as tidy as Thomas. He'd leave dishes in the sink for days, clothes on the bathroom floor. He stayed out late with the guys twice without texting to let me know. When I mentioned these things, he'd look at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "I didn't realize I was signing up for another wife," he joked once, but there was an edge to it. I tried to be the cool girlfriend, the opposite of what I imagined. Thomas told his friends I'd been like as a wife. I laughed it off, even though it bothered me. I started cleaning up after Ryan, making sure his favorite snacks were stocked, planning my schedule around his. It wasn't that different from what I'd done with Thomas, but I told myself this was different because Ryan was different. Meanwhile, Thomas had stopped reaching out altogether. I found myself checking my phone more often, surprised by the silence. I told myself I was relieved. This was what I wanted, a clean break. But something about his absence nagged at me in quiet moments. "You ever think about him?" Ryan asked, catching me scrolling through old photos one night. "No," I lied, quickly closing the app. "I'm exactly where I want to be." Ryan smiled and pulled me close, but there was something perfunctory about it. The intense focus he'd had on me those first weeks seemed to be fading. He was on his phone more, working late more. Ironically, the same behaviors that had bothered me about Thomas. I checked Thomas's social media one night while Ryan was out with friends. He'd posted a picture with Emma at her school play, the one I'd skipped because it would have been too complicated to see Thomas. They were both smiling, and something about seeing them happy without me twisted in my stomach. "This was your choice," I reminded myself, pouring another glass of wine. "You're happier now." The office holiday party was coming up, the anniversary of when Ryan and I first crossed the line. I decided we needed to recapture that magic. I bought a new dress, booked us a fancy dinner before the party. I was going to remind him why he'd wanted me in the first place. Remind myself why I'd risked everything. "About the party," Ryan said 3 days before. "I think maybe we should arrive separately." "Why?" I asked, feeling suddenly cold. "People at work are talking." He shrugged. "HR might get involved if they think we're together. It could get complicated." It was the first time either of us had acknowledged that what we'd done, having an affair, me leaving my husband, us living together, might have consequences beyond our personal lives. I'd been so caught up in the romance of it all that I hadn't considered the professional fallout. "Fine," I agreed, though it felt like another small crack in the perfect story I'd been telling myself. "Whatever you think is best." The night of the party arrived, and I spent hours getting ready, determined to make Ryan regret his separate arrival suggestion. I showed up fashionably late, making an entrance in my new dress. Ryan was already there, talking to, of all people, Melissa from accounting. The same Melissa who'd been giving me dirty looks for months. And from the way they were laughing, this wasn't their first conversation of the night. Something shifted in me as I watched them. A cold realization that maybe I wasn't seeing things clearly. That maybe I'd never been seeing things clearly. I grabbed a drink and found some other coworkers to talk to, pretending I didn't notice Ryan and Melissa. When he finally made his way to me an hour later, he acted like nothing was wrong. But something had changed. I could feel it. "You look nice," he said, but his eyes were already scanning the room over my shoulder. The holidays were approaching fast. Last year, Thomas, Emma, and I had gone all out. Matching pajamas, homemade cookies, a tree with all our special ornaments collected over the years. This year, Ryan mentioned he usually went to his parents' place in Phoenix. "You'll come too, of course," he said, but it sounded more like an obligation than an invitation. "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "I might stay here, catch up on some things." Ryan looked relieved, which told me everything I needed to know about where we stood. As Christmas grew closer, I found myself driving past my old house, mine and Thomas's house. The lights were up outside, just like we always did. Through the front window, I could see the tree. I wondered if Emma had hung the ornaments we'd made together last year. I wondered if Thomas had kept them at all. I spent Christmas Eve alone in Ryan's apartment. He'd left for Phoenix that morning, promising to call. He didn't. I ordered Chinese food and watched cheesy holiday movies and tried not to cry. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to go. Christmas Day was even worse. I scrolled through social media, seeing everyone's perfect family photos. Then I saw it. Thomas had posted a picture. Him and Emma in front of their tree, both smiling. His caption: "Smaller family this year, but just as much love. Merry Christmas to all." I burst into tears, not because he looked miserable without me, but because he didn't. They were doing just fine. Moving on. While I sat alone in an apartment that didn't feel like mine, with a boyfriend who was barely even that anymore, wondering how I'd convinced myself this was what I wanted. That night, after too much wine and self-pity, I did something I'd been wanting to do for weeks. I texted Thomas. "I've been thinking about you. Both of you. I miss you. Can we talk when I get back from visiting family?" The lie came easily. I couldn't admit I was alone on Christmas. I stared at my phone for an hour, waiting for those typing dots. They never came. Ryan returned 2 days after Christmas. He brought me a generic souvenir magnet and acted like our relationship was perfectly normal. I didn't have the energy to confront him about not calling, about Melissa, about any of it. I was too preoccupied with Thomas's silence. "How is your family?" Ryan asked, not really listening as he unpacked. "Good," I lied. "Really good." That night, I tried texting Thomas again. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I've been doing some thinking about us. I'd really like to call you tomorrow and talk. Just talk." I waited. Nothing. The next day at work was tense. Ryan was avoiding me, spending most of his time huddled with Melissa and some other colleagues. Office gossip travels fast. I could feel people watching me, whispering. I wondered if they knew about us. If they were judging me for leaving my husband. If they'd somehow found out I'd been reaching out to Thomas again. I couldn't take it. I left early, claiming a migraine. Back at Ryan's apartment, I called Thomas instead of texting. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I checked social media again, something I'd been doing obsessively. Thomas had changed his profile picture. No longer the family photo of the three of us that had been there since last summer. Now it was just him, looking more handsome than I remembered. I clicked through his recent posts, looking for clues about his life now. That's when I saw it. He'd unblocked me on the one platform where I'd blocked him first. Was that intentional? Was he checking up on me too? My heart racing, I unblocked him everywhere else. Then I sat back and waited, hoping he'd reach out now that the digital barriers were down. He didn't. I tried a third text, more desperate this time. "Thomas, please. I just want to apologize for how everything happened. You deserve that much at least. Can we please talk?" Hours passed. Nothing. Ryan came home late that night. not bothering with an excuse. I pretended to be asleep. I didn't want him to see I'd been crying, didn't want to explain that my tears weren't even about him. As I lay there in the dark, listening to Ryan move around the apartment, the full weight of what I'd done hit me. I'd walked away from a good man who loved me, from a child who needed me, from a life that, despite its mundane moments, had been built on something real. And for what? For someone who got bored of me just as quickly as he'd become infatuated, for a fantasy that had dissolved the moment it became reality. The next morning, Ryan was gone before I woke up. A note on the counter said he had an early meeting. I knew without checking that he'd be sitting with Melissa in the break room, laughing over coffee like he used to do with me. I called in sick to work. I couldn't face them, couldn't face anyone. I spent the day in a daze, moving around the apartment that still didn't feel like home. That's when I noticed subtle changes. Some of Ryan's things missing, drawers half empty. He was pulling away, preparing his exit, or maybe preparing for mine. In that moment, staring at the evidence that this relationship was already over, I made a decision. I was going to see Thomas in person. No more texts he could ignore, no more calls he could send to voicemail. I needed to look him in the eyes, to make him listen, to see if there was anything left to salvage. I drove to our house, his house now, rehearsing what I'd say. Apologies, explanations, promises to do better. I parked across the street, gathering my courage. That's when I saw her. A woman I didn't recognize, coming out the front door. Thomas followed, carrying Emma on his shoulders. They were all laughing. Emma looked happy, happier than I'd seen her in a long time. Thomas leaned over and kissed the woman before they all got into his car and drove away. I sat frozen, watching them disappear down the street. The family picture was complete again, only I wasn't in it anymore. Someone else had taken my place, someone who made them both smile in a way I apparently never had. The reality of what I'd done, and what I'd lost, hit me like a physical blow. Thomas wasn't ignoring my texts because he was hurt or angry. He was ignoring them because he'd moved on, because I no longer mattered. I drove back to Ryan's apartment in a daze. When I walked in, he was there, sitting on the couch with a serious expression. "We need to talk," he said. I almost laughed at the irony. Here I was, heartbroken over definitively losing my husband, about to be dumped by the man I'd left him for. "Melissa and I," he started. "Save it," I interrupted. "I already know." Ryan had the decency to look ashamed at least. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he said. Another irony. Those were the exact words I'd planned to say to Thomas. "I think it's best if you find somewhere else to stay," Ryan continued. "I can give you a couple weeks, but—" "I'll be gone tomorrow," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. That night, as Ryan slept on the couch and I lay awake in his bed for the last time, I scrolled through old photos of my life with Thomas and Emma. Birthday parties, vacations, ordinary days that I'd taken for granted. I'd thrown it all away for a fantasy that had lasted barely 3 months. The next day, I packed my things and left while Ryan was at work. I couldn't bear a formal goodbye. Couldn't stand to hear whatever carefully rehearsed speech he'd prepared about how these things happen, or how nobody meant to hurt anyone. I checked into a cheap hotel and tried to figure out what came next. I had no husband, no home, no boyfriend. Soon, I'd need to find a new job too. I couldn't keep working with Ryan and Melissa, watching their relationship flourish where mine had crashed and burned. Out of desperate habit, I checked Thomas's social media one last time. He'd posted a new photo, him, Emma, and the mystery woman at some winter carnival. His caption, "New year, new beginnings, new family member coming this summer." Couldn't be happier. It took me a moment to understand what I was reading. The woman was pregnant. Thomas was going to have another child, a child that should have been mine, could have been mine if I hadn't been so selfish, so blind. I threw my phone across the hotel room and finally let myself sob, huge, gasping cries that felt ripped from somewhere deep inside me. I cried for the family I'd lost, for the future I'd thrown away, for the person I'd become. Most of all, I cried because I knew, with absolute certainty, that there was no going back. Thomas had closed that door, locked it, and thrown away the key. In just a few months, I'd managed to destroy everything good in my life. I'd chosen excitement over stability, passion over partnership, fantasy over reality, and now I had nothing. No excitement, no passion, no fantasy. Just an empty hotel room and the crushing weight of my own terrible choices. The worst part wasn't losing Thomas, or even seeing him move on with someone else. The worst part was knowing that I had no one to blame but myself. I'd done this. All of it. I'd walked away from a good man who loved me, who would have worked on our marriage if I'd given him the chance. I'd hurt a child who trusted me to be there for her. I'd thrown away 5 years of building a life together for 3 months of excitement that turned out to be as substantial as smoke. I keep wondering when Thomas will answer my texts, why he won't let me back into the life we built. But I already know the answer. He's not keeping me out. I walked out, and while I was busy convincing myself I deserved more, he realized he deserved more too. More than someone who could throw away their family on a whim. More than someone who chose the fantasy over the reality.